time trial was a positive exception. Was a bit better than we had hoped for. If you drop from 50 riders in Dauphiné, okay, that's not a gap you can close in 2 weeks of training. But the gap that there was something that you would be able to close at least. 100% sure that if he makes a podium in Nice, he will be satisfied. Yes.
Welcome to the Castelli podcast, where we delve into the cutting-edge world of cycling performance, aero clothing, training, nutrition. I'm your host, Søren Jensen, and today we have a fascinating guest with us who embodies the perfect blend of science and sport. Welcome to Koen Pelgrim. Hope you pronounced your name correct.
Yes.
Performance coach and trainer of one of the sport's biggest cycling teams, Soudal Quick-Step. But Koen, before we dive into the interview, let's start first with a quick fire round of 3 questions. You're only allowed to answer yes or no, or if absolutely necessary, a 1-sentence answer. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, Remco has improved a lot overall, both physically, mentally, and his technique since he turned pro. Do you think there's still room for progress?
Yes.
Do you think blood lactate testing will become standard in the future for setting training zones?
It is already.
Let's talk about recovery during the last week of a Grand Tour. Do we even let the riders look at their recovery matrix?
No.
Okay, that was an easy start.
Yes. Looks like it.
Good, thanks for taking the time again. I know you're busy, especially now that the biggest cycling event on the calendar, the Tour de France, is about to take place. We are 24 hours from the start of stage 1. We're sitting here live from Florence. But before we dive into this interview, let's first start by telling our listeners about your background and how you ended up with Soudal Quick-Step and how you started coaching one of the world's best cyclists and 2-time world champion, Remco Evenepoel.
That's a lot of questions at once. No, I was always interested in cycling ever since I was a little boy. And then I started to do cycling myself when I was around 14 years old, I think. And ever since I started, it has always interested me a lot, like how everything worked, why you should do this kind of training. I also had a coach already then who was very geeky into all that kind of stuff, making training programs already then. So it always had my interest, and then I finished high school and I had to find something to study. I didn't really know what, as is quite normal at that age. And then I found out that you could study something like exercise physiology. And actually at that point I was surprised because I didn't know that anything like that existed in university. So that got my interest. So then I decided to try to go for that. So then I started to study human movement sciences in Nijmegen University, just because that was one of the few options where you could study exercise physiology later on in the curriculum. And then at the end of that, I had to do an internship where you had to do your own research about something in physiology. And then I figured out that in Leuven they were doing a lot of these studies, cycling related, because in Nijmegen where I was, it was more sort of medically related with people having diseases and stuff like that. But then in Leuven they were doing a lot with cyclists. So then I wrote an email there, and I could do an internship there. I did my own research about altitude training there, and I did that for 6 months, I think. And then that was finished, and I got my degree, and there was a position there at the university because they also had a facility connected to the university where they did testing for athletes and training training programs for endurance athletes. So then I could start to work there, and after 1 month there was a project that started to do the training and testing of a professional cycling team, which was Topsport Flanders. Which was a project combined from the sponsor, which is the Flemish government, and they wanted to increase the support for that team through a project with that research sport facility at the university. And then I was appointed to do that project. So then I did that for 4 years. So I coached that team for 4 years, and then in the meantime, Quick-Step was also coming to the same facility for testing, and so I got to know all the people in Quick-Step a bit already as well. And then they needed a coach in end of 2011, and then they asked me if I wanted to do that, and ever since I've been in Quick-Step.
So that's 13 years.
Yeah,
it's been 13 years already.
Yes.
Wow, time is flying.
Exactly.
How hard were those early years of coaching?
It has different challenges. When you start, especially like when I started with Topsport, I was, I think, 24 myself. And I was never a really good cyclist, just some kid from university, and then you have to tell professional cyclists what to do. Well, it was not very standard then yet to have a coach in a team. Everything was still a bit more old school. So then it's more difficult to get to convince people to follow what you're advising them or what you're trying to help them with. And then it was also that everybody in the team was obliged to be coached by me, which makes it more difficult than when a rider comes to you yourself and says, "Yeah, I think you're a good coach. I believe in what you do, and give me a program." And when you have to say, "Yeah, you have to listen to what I say," especially when you're still young and you haven't proven anything yourself yet. So that had different challenges. Now it's completely different because you've sort of made a bit of a name, where you achieved, at least you proved it, that cyclists that you work with, that they have been successful at times. So then the riders are easily convinced that what you're advising them, that's not complete bullshit. But then of course now it's more a matter of having all the details right. Because now the pressure is, of course, much different. Like if Remco is not good this Tour de France, it's a total different pressure than when a neo-pro in Topsport Flanders was riding Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne, for example.
Yeah. We're going to get into that here in a little bit, also regarding Remco, a little bit about his season as well. But let's finish off your early years first, and then fast forwarding up till today. How have you seen the improvement in technology change over the years? And now with the last 4 years with the AI as well, we got all the variables, we got all these numbers, and even amateur cyclists, they bomb themselves every day with all the measurements, no matter if it's the HRV or whatever it is. And a lot of them are on training peaks. Most people don't even know how to use those numbers correct. Can you tell us a little bit about how cycling was, performance coaching was in the early years and leading up to today? Or do you think we have a little bit too many tools in our hands now?
Yeah, it has changed a lot, but you don't really notice it in the meantime. It goes very gradually. Like there's this one little thing, you start to use it a bit, and then use it a bit more, and then something else comes, and you don't really realize it until I compare now, like how different it was when I started, and like what we are doing now. The base is still the same, but all the different tools that you use are, of course, that there are much more tools that you can use. The danger is, of course, always that it also distracts you. It takes a lot of time and you can easily do the wrong things like with any tool. Like if you want to use a hammer, it's very good to put nails in in the wood. But if you use it for somewhere else, it's a completely useless tool. So it's a bit the same. Like with a power meter, is super useful. I think everybody knows it's super popular. Everybody uses it nowadays. But you can also draw completely wrong conclusions with it. Like I had a discussion with one of the sport directors yesterday about it a bit. Who said, they're only relying on the power meter, and that's not good. And I said, I agree with that. Like it's a useful tool, but if you only rely on a certain number, then of course, the day that your power meter doesn't work is completely.
They don't even know how to race, or even not even going out on a training ride because they don't know what zones to stay in because maybe they don't have that personal physical feeling without looking at the numbers.
Exactly.
Or you're looking at your heart rate, maybe you're dehydrated and the heart rate will show some higher numbers.
Yes, and that's the thing. That's exactly why these tools are useful and why you can also use them wrong. Like the heart rate is a perfect example. Like if you only use your heart rate and you're tired, it's different. When it's cold, it's different. When it's warm, it's different. But if you don't use your heart rate, and you only see the power and you don't see how your heart rate responds to it, you also miss a lot of information.
Yeah.
So it's always trying to put the numbers that you get out of it into the right context so that you learn and you see how they align with what you're feeling yourself also. That you should not rely just on a number, and especially not on one number, but you should use it as a little part of the puzzle that you use in trying to understand like what's going on in my body, but like where am I? Am I fit? Am I healthy? Am I fresh? And part of that is the biggest part of it is always how you feel, because that's still the most sensitive thing. And with all these other numbers, you try to add small pieces to the puzzle to understand it a bit better, and also in retrospect to see like what happened before and what did we do and how did we end up here.
Yeah.
And in that way, all these tools, they make sense, but it's easily to get distracted by them.
By the numbers, or waking up in the morning with an HRV number that is out of the roof. Could be because you're just a little stressed or you had a bad night of sleep. But it doesn't mean that your day on the bike is completely a day off, or you should shift completely your training program for the day. Because we have seen even Olympic medalists winning gold medals with only a few hours of sleep.
No, exactly. I mean, that's exactly a good point why you should not. I mean, you should not use one number as a black or white thing. It's just an extra little piece of information. Like when we track the HRV with riders and their sleep and their resting heart rate, and when we see that over certain days that it's been that resting heart rate has been elevated, HRV is low, they're not feeling very well. Okay, then you know that you shouldn't really push them on training. You just give them an extra rest day, or you keep them easy. You don't do these intervals. And then in other periods where you see like everything is normal, HRV is high, resting heart rate is low, sleep is perfect, and you also have sort of extra ground to say, okay, now we can really push them. Now, okay, we do these intervals. Maybe it's even the fourth day of training, but you can still go out and go hard. It's your body is ready to push you, and that's always a bit of extra information that you have. Especially the feedback of the rider is important, but the feedback of a rider is also not always 100% clear, and then that gives you a bit of extra information also, or you can ask different questions so you can get a bit more information out of them, because you have certain tools that you see that you know where to look for.
Yeah, also because I think also with the riders, when they need to give you feedback, one thing is that they can write you an email, or you do that on a video call or a phone call or in person, of course building up to some very epic races like the Tour de France right now. when the riders then are at home, inserting the feedback could be just a scale from 1 to 10, like the RPE number or just the overall mood. Because if the mood is low, that means that motivation for going out and training is also low, and that could be referred to then fatigue or other things. It's not just about collecting the numbers, but also using them to something useful.
Yeah, and looking at them in the right context also.
Exactly. I've known Remco now since we joined the team 3 years ago. He looks at everything. Everything has to be dialed in, getting just the aero socks perfect on, the suit, everything just needs to be perfect. Is he the same when it comes to all the numbers? Does he like to sit and just crank through the numbers after his training sessions, or does he leave it more up to you and then you guys discuss and he asks you the questions?
It's a bit of a mix, I would say. For sure he looks at the numbers, but by now he also knows which numbers are good, like reference to his own best numbers. So he knows if he does a certain type of intervals or trainings with a certain type of weight, that he knows what's good and what isn't. So he knows for certain trainings what the goal is, and then if it goes in a certain way and he can easily do these watts, and he knows, okay, I'm going in the right direction, and if not, then he also knows himself already that there's still work to do. But he's not going to sit together behind the computer and say, what is my CTL score now? Like stuff like that doesn't really interest him. It's just like, okay, he trusts the process, and he trusts, okay, this is the program, this is what we're gonna do. But then, okay, there's a certain way that things should evolve, and if there are certain signs that it's not going the way it should be, okay, then we look at the numbers and we see also at the plan and how many days there are and what training we can do. And
because I've seen a lot of professionals looking at the Training Peaks app on the phone, doing the post-training lunch to see numbers of that, what they did in the morning. And maybe it's better just doing it the way that you and Remco are handling it.
It's something that could be useful in for certain goals, but it's just a number that with a lot of there are a lot of variables that it doesn't put into account. Like it puts into account how much stress you put on the system, but it says nothing about how your body is able to handle that stress. Like you can do this exactly same training program twice, and the result can be 100% different.
That is interesting, and that's also good, especially when you go into a Grand Tour, which you already won La Vuelta in 2022, not being too fixed on the numbers, because as you said, numbers can be wrong and you might be feeling better. So just, even though you have the number in front of you, maybe not looking at it, but just focus on your feeling, or riding your feeling. When I ask you one of the 3 questions at the beginning about lactate testing, it's been around for a long time. Even back in the early 90s, sports scientists were using it for when they were testing, also doing the RAM test. It's been kind of gold standard for setting training zones. But today we have 3 data points. We have power, heart rate, and then the lactate, to get a much fuller metabolic picture compared to using only a power and a heart rate. Do you think it will be easier in the future to also have access? There is a little bit already on the market today, but had some live blood lactate monitors on our athletes every day to set the training numbers at in the future.
Probably that will come for sure. I mean, if you see the way that they measure blood glucose, I mean, that's, you have a continuous measurement. I think in the same way you should be able to measure also other metabolites, from which lactate is, of course, the most obvious one. So I'm pretty sure that in the future that this will be sort of a standard. Maybe not in racing, because it's forbidden also to use by the UCI at the moment, but for training that for sure could be a useful tool.
Could be very useful. I mean, we were all starting out with our heart rates and then got the power meters, and maybe it's the next step. And I see a lot already in cycling, but also in the running community, that there are a lot of these gadgets now, and you can do your own testing there, and a lot of runners are doing it on.
There are many tools.
So how often would you, leading up to a Tour de France, how often would you test Remco? Every 3 weeks?
No, I mean, it depends a bit. Like, you get your information from different sources. Like when we did, for example, we did a training camp in May on altitude in Sierra Nevada. There we did a lactate threshold test at the start, and then we did one at the end. And there was a similar protocol as that we also did in the past. So then we knew what the starting point was, we knew what the training zones was, and then we also knew after 3 weeks what the result was of those 3 weeks, and we knew what his level was also going into Dauphiné. But then, of course, in Dauphiné, he does the race, and then you have a lot of maximal efforts from which you can also relate it to a different source. Of course, you're not going to compare that to a lactate test, but you compare that again then to other tests or data that you have from races. And then afterwards, we did another camp then after Dauphiné in the Alps. And there we just did a few hard efforts that were close to maximum.
That was when you were at altitude in Isola?
Yeah. And then, then you reference these intervals to other periods where he did these intervals close to races where afterwards we knew that he was going to be good. So then, your reference point is always a little bit different, but there is always a reference point.
Yeah. But it's not like back in the day when professional cyclists living in Europe would use like the Monte Serra, which is not too far from here, climb, as you probably know, of the Colle la Madone or the Rocca Corba in Girona as the go-to FTP test climb. You guys are doing it in different locations, basically.
Yeah, and there's like the variables also change a bit. Like you're on altitude. Maybe you only have climbs that you can do around 1,500 meters. That already has an effect on what you do. It's warm. So that you cannot always completely compare it with something else. I think a lot of these things also came from the time before you had the power meter. Then you just had your climb, you went up full gas, and you just looked, how did I go faster than the previous time? And that was your reference. And also the lab testing with the lactate, that was sort of your only real reference point. Yeah. Because for the rest of the time you would just, you had your speed and you had your heart rate, but you had no real idea if you were good or bad. You just could compare with the other guys. So I think the power meter also gave a lot of extra data points in this, that the lactate testing is sort of a confirmation of what you already know, or if you want to know something a little bit more in detail, or if you want to have a bit of extra information without having to push somebody through like 3 maximal effort tests, right. Because that's also
no fun.
That also usually doesn't fit into the training program.
No, because you need a bit of recovery as well on that. But when now you mention also Isola and Sierra Nevada, when you go in altitude, how long does it take for a rider to adapt to the altitude? Also, I assume that beginning your resting heart rate is high and your HRV low, and first couple of nights, most of the times, my experience and talking to riders, they say that the first couple of nights they don't really sleep that well. How is it when you go into an altitude camp?
It's very different from rider to rider, I would say. Yeah, we have riders who don't have any issues with it, and we have riders who suffer a bit with it, and then sometimes they also suffer once, and then next year you do it again, and then
they're fine.
And then they're fine, and they have a period where they don't sleep very well. And then on altitude, it's even worse. And then, of course, that impairs the rest of the training as well.
So you do change, or you can change the training program like on daily basis, depending on the numbers and how they feel and the mood.
Yes, you can. And it's also based on what you see on training. Or if you say, okay, you can do a little bit extra, use better. You don't do the final climb. You go in the car. you don't do that every day, but you do it based on what you see.
So going to Isola 2000, was that due to the Tour de France this year? Because I know also UAE was there, Ineos were there. I mean, a lot of the GC teams were in Isola at the same time. And if I remember right, I think it was G saying that one of the two ways up was blocked or was never cleaned for snow, so you had to just go up and down the same way, and most of the times transport at least down the mountain in a car in the morning because it would just be too cold. Was that first time for the team going to Isola?
Yeah, well, we've never been there before, so we didn't really know the area as well. But then we wanted to do a camp in the Alps after Dauphiné because it's just logistically it makes the most sense, and also the weather is usually quite good in that period. But there are not many locations in the Alps where you can really stay above 2,000 meters, because most of the winter sport resorts, they are like 1,700 meters, 1,600 meters, 1,800 meters. So I think there's only Tignes, Val Thorens and Isola 2000. I think that are over 2,000 meters. And then most of the important stages that we still wanted to see were in that region as well, so we could combine it with a Recon. So then we choose for Isola, and then there's usually you can go. Isola is on the Col de la Lombarde to the border with Italy, and you can go over that climb. Then you can go to Italy, but that was closed until the last weekend. We were there. So only the last day we went there for training. But if you go into the valley on the French side, there are also a lot of options that you can do. And for us, like we've never been there before, so every climb was sort of
so it's not
new
like
to us.
Yeah, you were running into UAE or Ineos or the riders on your training rides.
No, when you go down, when you come up, you see them sometimes, but that's the same in Sierra Nevada or in Tenerife.
It is.
In the mountains, usually not many options you have.
What stages did you recon?
We did a recon of the first training block. We did this stage 4 over the Galibier. So we went by car over the Col de la Bonette, and then we started training there. So it was like a 4.5 or 5 hour ride until the finish in Valbar, and then we slept there. And then the next day we went the other way around, which was stage 19, I think, with the finish in Isola. So then we did Col de Vars, Col de la Bonette, and Isola 2000. So then we limited the traveling a bit, and we were still able to do the most important parts from these 2 stages. And then on a rest day, one of the first days after the Dauphiné, we did a recon of the time trial from Monaco to Nice again, because it's also not so far. We did it also after Paris already, but we wanted to do it again. And then one of the other training days, we did the stage 20 all the way until Col de la Quille, and Remco did also the Isola.
So he feels confident having reconned the key stages, because I remember when we met all of us on the second time this spring in the wind tunnel in Milan, Politecnico, Remco told me that he had reconned the gravel stage, the stage 9, which he told me in Calpe that he was a little worried about. But when I met him then, when the second time, I think it was February, when was it February we met up for the second time in the tunnel?
Yeah, March. After Paris.
It was after Paris, yeah. Then he said that he said there's nothing to worry about. It's not as bad as maybe it had looked on paper, the 32 kilometers.
Yeah, it's like you have gravel and you have gravel. Like you can have Strade Bianchi, which is super hard also because of the altitude meters.
Up and down, yeah.
It can be loose, can be hard, it can be technical. But I think this gravel stage is as safe as they could probably have made it. I mean, there's always risk and it will always be stressful, and maybe in 1 week you're all laughing about what I'm saying now.
Yeah,
but it looks like there are no descents in gravel, so it's usually flat or it's slightly uphill.
Less technical, yeah.
It's quite straight. The roads are pretty wide. Just it's open, so it can also the wind could be an issue. But there are no really hard climbs on that circuit also, so it's not like 2 or 3 years ago in the Giro when Remco dropped on the gravel stage. They had also the first sector was mainly downhill, which was dangerous. They had split up already, and then the other ones were a lot of steep uphills where differences were easily made. While here it's relatively flat and looks like the gravel is going to be quite okay. I think they're also gonna make sure that it's quite hard and that it's closed for traffic for the last few days after they prepared it the last time. At least that's something I've heard. Good. I don't know if that's true, but I believe that's how it is.
We all know that race is not going to be won on stage 9, but it can be lost on stage 9 with a defect of 4.
It's a cliche, but it's true. Yes,
it is true. It is true. Yeah, but also what's good about also with Soudal Quick-Step is that Remco around him, you have some of the best domestic riders to guide him. Riders like Yves, Gianni, used to all the couples and all those hard races up there in the spring. So no, that's good. We touched then on Dauphiné. Remco placed 7th in the overall. He won the time trial. He was feeling great. Maybe he just couldn't keep up with the fastest in the mountains. There could also be he had an off day or had a little bit of extra weight. I don't know how far he probably was from his perfect Grand Tour race weight. But was that the issue in Dauphiné, or did he just have an off day?
No, I don't think it was an off day. It was more or less, okay, I think the second, there were 3 uphill finishes in the final weekend. I think the second one was the worst day that he had. Was not really a complete off day either. I think it was just more or less the level that he had at that moment. And the time trial was a positive exception. Was a bit better than we had hoped for.
It was very good.
Yeah. But
he smashed it.
But going into Dauphiné, we knew that he was not on the level to go to compete for the overall win. We were not even sure if he was able to really go for a GC.
Yeah.
Or if he was just gonna target a stage here or there. Because like I told you before, we did a test coming into the camp that we saw that there was really a lot of work to be done. Which made sense because he was 3 weeks off his bike after the crash in Basque. So then he trained for 10 days before he came to the camp. So that we knew that there was a lot of work, and then also he struggled a bit on the training. He didn't feel good on the training, and then towards the end of the camp it was a bit better, but not on the level that you need to have to be able to compete for the win in a race like Dauphiné with all these GC contenders. And that also showed during the race. And I think considering the level that he had the week before going to Dauphiné, we were sort of satisfied or relieved with what he showed there. Because we knew that there was still a lot of things that needed to be tweaked.
Yeah.
In terms of shape, in terms of weight, still certain just work that still needed to be done, and the gap was not that big that you cannot bridge it anymore before the tour. Of course, if you drop from 50 rides in Dauphiné, okay, that's not a gap you can close in 2 weeks of training. But the gap that there was something that you would be able to close. At least that's my personal analysis of the situation. Then of course you don't know how it is compared to the riders who were not in Dauphiné. We don't know how it is compared to Pogačar. We don't know how it is compared to Vingegaard. We also don't know how much the other riders still are able to improve after Dauphiné.
Right.
But at least the gap to the best riders in Dauphiné is a gap that we should have been able to close now for the tour, at least. That's how I see it.
That's good to hear. He seems very motivated when I spoke to him here this afternoon, and has the eye on the ball completely. Can that sometimes also be a small issue, because he has a winning mentality? He wants always to be a number one. He's pushed to his best. Mm-hmm. Can this sometimes also be a little challenging to you as his coach?
Of course, it doesn't make it easy, but it's top sport, so the goal is not to make it easy. Of course, the goal is to get the best out of it. And I think an athlete like this is only, it's a dream to work with. I mean, you need riders that are very sharp on details, that are very motivated to do anything. I mean, that's also motivating for me, and also keeps me sharp. So that I prefer that by far over a rider who says, "Oh, yeah, everything's okay. I just do it. Whatever you say is okay." I mean, that doesn't.
No.
That doesn't keep you sharp, and also doesn't lead to the best results. Everybody needs to be critical when it's necessary, without doubting everything either, of course.
So during the tour, will the other sports directors, the DS, you'll probably also be inside the team car. Would they let you do some of the talking to Remco, or would it be also being involving you in the team tactics?
No, I think the coaching within the race is up to the sports directors. Of course, that's their job, and that's also what they do best. But if there's certain information that I can give to help them during a race or after a race, then of course then we try to give it to them. If it's about to see if like how his performance was on a certain day, or if he lost energy in a certain part of a race, that we can see afterwards, or if they need to have a certain prediction on how many watts they can push in order to pace the team or Remco. That's information that's able to help the sport directors in the decisions that they make and instructions that they make. So if I can help them with that, then that's.
So you use it into meetings with the sports directors then in the evening.
Yeah, I try to give an overview of like the efforts that they did during the day, and if there's useful information that I see to make it in an overview for them, and then if there's need, we can discuss about details about the past stage or about the upcoming stage.
How many riders do you have under your wings? How many riders do you coach on the team?
7 or 8, I think.
That's a lot to look out for, and
yeah. Well, that's
it's part of the job, and like you said, also your passion. So we started out the interview with my first question here, that Remco has improved physically and mentally. His technique is amazing since he turned pro not that many years ago. So it wouldn't be surprising if he makes further progress. And you said yes to that question. How much more do you think there is still to gain?
There's always room for improvement, of course. But the day you say, I cannot improve anything anymore and I will not try it anymore, then of course you're on the way down. And I think the other competitors are also doing this. So it's always, you should always have the ambition to make improvements, and that can be here on the physical, on the mental part, on the technical part, or on the material part, or we went to the wind tunnel how many times with Remco.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not that we now gonna say, okay, that's it. Now we're gonna keep it like this for 2 years. Like, we're also gonna try to make further improvements on what we did in March.
Yeah, no, we're definitely fine-tuning everything we can. And like you said, always being on the edge, pushing yourself, because then you also bring in feedback maybe from other teams where you might be able to get your hands on a suit or something else that we want to test. And we look at the numbers together and see how we can keep being ahead of the race. So that's right. There is a growing respect for Remco in the pro peloton or around the world. He's such an exceptional, talented athlete. What do you think about the Tour de France? Because he's competitive as nature. And I know that the team's goal, that was what was written in the press release that came out the other day, is to get a podium placement. But I mean, he's a natural born winner. Will Remco be satisfied with, between brackets, just a podium, you think?
Yes, I think so. I'm 100% sure that if he makes a podium in EC, he'll be satisfied. Yes, But of course, he's also a winner. So if he can win a stage on top of that, would make him even more happy. And if he feels that there is a chance to win the overall, he will also try to. I mean, everybody would do that. I mean, that's the goal of the race: try to win.
Yeah,
it's sport, but I mean, you also have to be realistic. And then I think that two guys who are still on a higher level, at least that's what the past has shown. So I don't think it's realistic to talk about winning the race. And I think even to be on the podium means you have to beat all these other guys who are there, like Roglic or like that. There's so like I looked at it yesterday with Tom Stills, and there's like 35 riders who could do top 10 in the race. So if you could do a podium, that would be a great success, of course.
It will be a huge, Because when I spoke to Remco in December, he said to me that a top 5, he would be happy. But again, he also told me that the Tour, of course, is the big milestone of the season. But right after, we also have the TT at the Olympics. There are some very big goals there for him. Beginning of the season, you decided together with Remco that he would do less races in the build-up to the Tour de France, correct?
Not necessarily less races, but I mean, we never prepared the Tour, so it's not that we're doing less races than in the previous build-up to the Tour. We picked out certain races that we said was good to target and also useful and a nice goal also.
But he started out later in the season, probably with the main goal of being the Tour.
Yes, the idea was a bit that he start a little bit later and not go to sort of exotic races like Argentina last year or Colombia. These races, to have a bit more base at home without a lot of traveling and a lot of going around. Also, when there's certain things that still need to be done for sponsors, etc. That everything can be done before the races start, and then everything is calm. And the goal was also to do the spring without any altitude camps, because we knew that after Liège there was going to be a big block of camps, being away from home, just focusing everything on that. We didn't want him to start that period with already being tired of it, or being tired of being away from home, or so that altitude camp was a new, fresh input and something. Now we're gonna be able to make that extra step because of we're gonna do something on top of that we didn't do earlier this year. So that was a bit the goal. Of course, at the end he raced less because he crashed in the middle of what was meant to be his main target of the spring. Like Algarve was a sort of preparation, then Paris was a big target, Basque was a big target, and the Ardennes Classics were a big target.
Defending his Liège title, which didn't happen because of that terrible crash there at the Basque.
Yeah.
How did that change, or that crash, then swifted the whole training plan and preparation for the rest of the season?
Of course, you have a lot of the important goals are gone immediately, so that's a deception. And then also you have to recover from that crash. So it took time for the injuries to heal. There's surgery, there's anesthesia to do the surgery. There's even afterwards, when you start again on a bike, there's always a sort of discomfort. There's a bit of pain. There's like a time trial position that you cannot use, so that you cannot do that training. You sleep worse in the night because if you lay on one side, it's still painful. So everything is a bit compromised. So that of course changed the whole approach. So you started at altitude camp on a much lower level than what we were ideally planning for. And then also the progress is a bit more difficult because you're still not feeling great when you're on training, and the recovery is a bit less, so you can also not really push yourself. And then there's also a limited amount of time that that you have. So then it's really trying to keep the balance between doing enough work so you can make progress, but without, we're still giving the body a bit of time to recover and to get back to 100%.
As I know also from his YouTube episode, the YouTube channel, that also with the physio, I mean, there was a lot of work that went into that, strength training and so on.
Yeah, and that takes time and effort also. And
it does, yeah.
You also don't want him to sit on the bike completely twisted and then create another problem that he gets back pain or he gets a knee injury or whatever. So that's also work that needs to be done. But of course, it also takes energy and that energy you can only spend it once. And so.
Yeah. Now let's hope for all the best here for the tour, but also for the rest of the season and the future. Koen, I got one last question, and it's not regarding or concerning Remco or anyone else here on the team, but what sort of advice would you give to everyday cyclists like myself and our podcast listeners, and maybe amateurs racing on the weekends in terms of practical recovery routines, especially when you have to balance work life, family, and training? What kind of routines would you recommend?
That's a difficult question, I would say.
It's also a big one.
Yeah. It could be a lot of things. It really depends on the situation, of course. But I would never ever compromise on sleep. I think that's the main recovery tool that you have, where your body is really able to reset. You can do anything right in terms of nutrition or anything else, but if you don't sleep, then everything is wasted. So never try to squeeze in more hours by getting up super early or like doing a workout very late and then not be able to sleep, or I have to get up early for work or something. So that's something I would never try to compromise on. And then for the rest, just use common sense, I would say. Basically, it always comes down to this. You can make it super geeky about nutrition and tools and supplements and this and that, but it's always the base that it starts with, and that's, everybody knows what they need to do to recover in terms of proteins or carbs, this and that.
Correct.
So I think you just have to use your common sense
and keep it simple.
Yes.
And then, as you said many times already during this interview, listen to your body. How do you feel?
Yeah, that's something that no coach can tell you. I mean, that you only feel what you feel. So
because it's so easy to overtrain. We all tend to overtrain. You feel bad when you take a day off. Mentally, but you're going to feel so much better the next day, or if you even take 2 days off once in a while, or you have building up also up your 3 weeks blocks or whatever, and then 1 week off, or the way that you can incorporate this into your daily routine, also with the family. If you have a stress at work, a lot of meetings, maybe something with the family, just go slower maybe on the training then, and don't panic when it comes to all the jargon to hear on the internet with the 80-20 training polarized. I mean, try to find something that really works for you.
Yeah, and something that you like to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most important, especially the guys here, they get paid for it and good money. So it's their job, but for any amateur, it's something that you should enjoy. And even for them here, it's still the base. Like if you go out in the morning and you like to ride your bike, it makes just everything so much easier. And if you like to do certain types of efforts, then you do that. If you like to do a bit of racing with your bodies up a climb, that could also work in any kind of program. But if you do it in a way that you're able to enjoy it, I think that's the most important thing. It's like in normal life, like people with a burnout, it's not because they train too much, but it's an overload in terms of work, and you don't enjoy what you do anymore, and it's just the overload of stress, and then you feel also empty and tired. So that's the same with the sport, and especially you have to keep that combination with your home situation and you doing your work and trying to do your sport. If everything turns out to be stressed to be able to get everything done, then they will never get the result out of it that you want to have. You will always be tired, even if you train a bit less. Just you have to be able to enjoy and relax some in between as well.
Yeah. I used to think about it also when I raced myself, that when you're tired, you just keep, pounding out those watts and go riding every day. It's like building up a big wall, like the Chinese wall. Every day you're just putting more, like one brick into the wall, just more stress on the body, that at one point it's just difficult to get that whole thing down to low again.
Yeah. I mean, you need to be able to, your body needs to be able to rebuild also on the things that you destroy during the training. So if you never give it the chance to rebuild again, you can keep destroying, but it will never be a nice building.
What do you think about amateurs? No, I said it was the last question here before, about amateurs who maybe, I'm not saying cannot afford to have, but don't have time to go and have a weekly or daily massage. How important is it to do a couple of times a week, like stretching exercises, or use a foam roller? I still see also at training camps and altitude that a lot of professionals always run around also with a foam roller. Mm-hmm. What's your experience?
I think for an amateur or for just like a cyclotourist, I wouldn't invest in massage, because I think there are a lot of tools that you can use that you should use before you try to go into that, and a foam roller is an easy one. Don't think you can squeeze out lactic acid out of your muscles, because that's not what's happening.
Correct.
But I mean that also works, and stretching also works, but don't expect that you are able to do miracles with it either. First thing is always to keep the balance in training load and recovering, and then sleeping, and then nutrition.
Because I think with sleep, that's probably one of the key things that a lot of us, we forget about. And if you just like let's say that your average hours of sleep per night, let's say it's 8, but 4 times in a week you go to bed maybe 1 hour later, that's already a half a night less of sleep for that week. Mm-hmm. We don't think about 1 hour to be a lot, but if you continue doing it, then it's also difficult for the body in the end to recover there.
Yeah, and there's so many processes in the body that are being restored during sleep. Yeah. And that's not something you can.
No.
You can. You cannot replace that with any other tool. Sleep is not something you can replace with nutrition or.
No, you're right. You're so right. So here again, there's so many tools and gadgets out on the market, like the massage guns that cost a fortune, or those bubble things that are also supposed to give you a massage. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just...
of course, if it makes you feel good, and you have the opportunity and you like to use it, then of course, why not? I mean, it doesn't harm you. But if you have to prioritize, it would not be the first thing I would do.
No, I agree with you. This is going to be my absolute last one, promise. Cool. How do you keep yourself mentally fit, also physically, doing a 3-week grand tour? Do you go out for an easy run in the morning, or do you actually get to exercise? Because I assume also you need it.
I went out this morning for a 6-kilometer run, which is not a lot, but at least, you start the day with doing something. The main thing is try to sleep well. Don't try to drink too much alcohol.
Correct.
Or at least minimize that as much as possible. It also improves your sleep. And then you're also able to get out in the morning to do your run. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle as well.
Yeah.
So try to stay sharp from the first day on.
That's good.
And then try to get that to the end of the 3 weeks.
You're also going to be exhausted when you arrive in Nice in 3 weeks' time.
For sure. Let's hope so. And
Koen, thank you so much for being our guest. It's been a fantastic interview. I learned a lot. And I can't wait. And hopefully you would also like to do another interview, maybe end of the year, where we would also dive into other training matrix and other interesting things, or maybe do a deep dive also what is happening in a wind tunnel. Maybe we'll invite in the Castelli brand manager, Steve Smith, to that interview as well. It'll be fantastic to have both of you on. But thank you so much. All the best of luck for the Tour de France and the rest of the season. And I'll see you later.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.